So, this video was pretty much inspired by a conversation I had with Tori GNR1 and Shades at Night. The three of us were talking after Coolio had to leave after the Daredevil video he did it on the Milky Juice channel. By the way, that video is up, and please go check us out. We do fun, random, herpaderp stuff. It's awesome. Anywho, basically after that Coolio Vids had to leave. The three of us were talking, and we got on this conversation of what's definitive character. You know, what's definitive story that makes a character, or what makes a character, what defines the character the best, and what really works for it. And surprisingly, we got on the conversation of why why Tori GNR1 likes the character of the Riddler. That's his favorite Batman villain, and he's pretty much said all of his most of his stuff comes from the 90s Batman animated series, and he considers that to be the definitive Riddler. That's kind of like how a lot of people find the definitive Riddler, because there isn't, in my opinion, and this is in the opinion of a lot of other people, is that there is no real definitive Riddler story. I mean, Riddler is a supporting character, but there's never been like this big, oh my god, if you're a Riddler fan, you have to read this story kind of thing. It's more like when you think Riddler, you think back to the 90s cartoons. That's where he was a well-defined character. There's episodes to him, and his first episode was fantastic. The episode of his first appearance was absolutely brilliant, in my opinion. And that's the same thing with Mr. Freeze. You know, there are no real definitive Mr. Freeze story. Well, actually, no. A lot of people say Batman Snow is a definitive Mr. Freeze story, but that's really a retelling of his origin. But mostly a lot of people look at the Mr. Freeze origin in Batman the Animated Series, and a lot of the episodes dedicated to him, and that's the definitive Mr. Freeze. That's kind of like, there are, and I don't really have a problem with that. It's everyone to each his own, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Everyone has their opinion on what makes a character definitive. If you ask somebody about Spider-Man, you know, a lot of people will say, what's the definitive Spider-Man story? And a lot of people will say the Stan Lee and Jack Kirby stuff, or the JMS story, or JMS stories, or Maximum Carnage, or Spider-Man, Kraven's Last Hunt. You know, a lot of those, there are a lot of definitive character stories, and it all comes from people's perspective and how well these characters are written in said stories. You know, there are a lot of people, like All-Star Superman. A majority of people consider that All-Star Superman to be the definitive Superman story. That same goes for a lot of other characters, and in fact, it's kind of funny that I'm going to bring this up, is that during the conversation, we got on the conversation of the Batman 90s cartoon, and Dan and myself and a lot of other people consider the Batman 90s cartoon, the Bruce Timm cartoon, to be the definitive Batman. You know, this is where we see Batman's strengths, his weaknesses, and how well he's defined as a character. And he's portrayed as a guy who can, you know, still whoop a lot of ass, but you see a lot of weakness in him, and sometimes, even though a lot of people say, you know, Batman can do anything, but in this animated series, we see that he can't do everything, you know? There are points where he's like, he can't do everything. And that's, a lot of people do agree that, yeah, Batman, the 90s Batman cartoon, a lot of people consider that's a definitive Batman stuff. That's a lot of definitive Batman stuff, if not as well as villains. But I'm not here just to talk about the 90s Batman show. I think it all comes from perspective. I think it really does. What makes a definitive character story or origin. I mean, Shades brought up the fact that he considers, while he does like Batman Year One, he considers that a good story. He actually considers Batman Begins the definitive Batman origin stories. Now, he's not saying that. Now, let me back up by saying he's not saying that that's that is the canon origin to Batman. He's not saying that at all. He is in no way, shape, or form saying that this is the canon Batman origin from the movie. The movie is the canon origin to Batman. No, it's not. It's what he believes to be a good defining moment for a good defining Batman story, not just as a movie, but as who he is. You know, it defines how Bruce got this way and why you see him at at his lowest points and why you see him at his highest points throughout the, not just in Batman Begins, but in the rest of the Nolan franchise. He is in no, let me stress this again because I know someone is going to mess this up. He is in no way saying that the movie stuff should be canon with the comics. He's just saying that's his opinion, that this is what defines Nolan defined Batman very well in Batman Begins, and he considers that a definitive story to Batman. Are we good? Now, among other things, I feel like that is a good point, that there are a lot of... It doesn't have to be always comics that makes a definitive character. Like, a lot of people... like I was saying earlier, Riddler and Mr. Freeze have... it's not like with Joker, where you can go to comics and there are definitive Joker stories, like The Killing Joke. That's probably the best one, is Batman The Killing Joke, and a few other Joker stories. And a lot of people do consider, like, there are a lot of other characters out there, like, a lot of people consider... I had it. But there are a lot of people who do consider, like, a lot of people, and I have no problem with this, I'm not going to argue because that's their opinion, is that a lot of people consider Spectacular Spider-Man to be a definitive Spider-Man story, as well as Green Goblin's story. It does tell the life of Peter Parker, and it does explain why it does explain his high points and low points in ways that you can understand, and it's also a good definitive Green Goblin story in the sense that we get to see why he's the way he is and the mystery that is behind him and what he does is so messed, and why we see why he's so messed up. That's kind of the thing, is that a lot of people consider that, even though Green Goblin has a lot of definitive stories. Of course, I don't think I need to say it, the death of Gwen Stacy, that's a definitive, not just a definitive Spider-Man story, but a definitive Green Goblin story, in my opinion. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people have that. It's like with, when people go up to you, when people ask you, what do you think is the definitive Bane story? Nightfall. Personally, I think it's Nightfall and Gail Simone's Secret Six stuff. I think that has a lot of definitive Bane moments. Same thing goes with what's your favorite, Venom story? You could say, a lot of people could say, the birth of Venom, the origin of Venom, and a lot of people could also look at not just the Venom stuff, the Venom miniseries and the Venom ongoing, the short-lived Venom ongoing by Daniel Way. That was, I think, in the early 2000s, I believe. Anyway, we're not here to talk about that. A lot of people can say that because it was a run. But not just because the character has a ongoing series in a comic book does not mean that's a definitive story. I mean, a lot of people there are a lot of people who overlook runs to say that's not really a defined character, or it's not a way they want to be portrayed. That's kind of why a lot of people look at sometimes a lot of alternate universe stories as well to be a definitive story, like Batman: The Dark Knight Returns. Same thing with Superman Red Son. Actually, a better argument, a better statement would be All-Star Superman. That, like I said earlier, a lot of people consider that a definitive Superman story, because it really brings out I think it really depends on how well a story can bring out the best in that character, no matter if they're good or evil. I think it all depends on how well that character is written and how well it captures the audience, even though it's not like it captures the fan, but also captures new people to have new appreciation or a even more greater appreciation for that character. And that, I think, in my opinion, is what makes a defining character, is that how well they can keep lasting. And it's not just when people talk about those characters, people will be like, oh yeah, it's that one character from that one story arc. It's kind of like how a lot of people consider, damn it, I lost it. It's like how a lot of people consider there are even miniseries to be like, Penguin, Pain and Prejudice. A lot of people are saying that's the definitive Penguin story, even though it's just a miniseries all about him, but that really brings out who the Penguin is and why the way he is, what he does and why the way he is. It's stuff like that that I think really bring what makes a character well defined, in my opinion. So, I think I've pretty much covered everything in this video. I think there was I could have said more, but I really wanted to keep this video short. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. You guys tell me what you think of this, and yeah, what do you think makes a definitive character? So, anyway, guys, I'm out.